Yes.
Okay, I'm back. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, man. No worries. Okay, so thank you for doing this again.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, this one would be shorter. So let's move on directly to the question and the little debate I want to have with you about Hoka.
Okay.
Hoka, who used to be Hoka One and would transition into Hoka. Nobody really ever told us officially something, but it was a bit of a I don't know. I don't know how you felt about this, but I was like, no, it's still because people on social media were like, no, it's Hoka now. I was like, no, it's Hoka One. I talked to one of the founders yesterday, and then all of a sudden it became Hoka. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the shoe, which is called the Carbon X.
Yep.
I'm sure you have had that shoe, whether you had the version 1, 2, or 3. I had the first one and I had the second one. I didn't have the third one. But I was hoping for something better in the sense that as much as I enjoy the shoe, I don't see it at the starting line of important races. You're talking about marathons. We discussed the New York marathons. Most people are wearing Nikes. And the other brand that I see not emerging, but coming back super strong in this carbon plate era is Asics.
Yep.
So it's pro athletes, especially in Ironman triathlons or in everyday, but mostly pro athletes. Like the visibility that I see from pro athletes is Nike and Asics. I don't see that many people wearing the Carbon X. And I know for a fact in triathlon that not that many pro athletes have shoe sponsors, but they decide to go with Nike.
Yep.
A lot of them they buy the Nike or Nike give it to them. Doesn't mean they're sponsored by Nike.
Yep.
And I feel a little bit weird about it, especially in triathlon, because Hoka spends so much money in advertising, sponsoring, marketing. You see Hoka everywhere in triathlon.
Yep.
And it seems like no one wins with this shoe. And I'm not sure this shoe is such a success, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, so I agree with most of what you're saying there. I think that certainly Nike is prevalent in most major marathons, both at the front of the pack and also through the age groupers. Certainly their design and their foam has been really successful. I think that Asics is definitely emerging. I think that their Metaspeed Sky Plus and what's the other one? The Metaspeed.
Yeah, all the Metaspeed series, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Metaspeed series are really good. They're really good foams, and they have each one is different. But just like the Vaporfly and the Alphafly, the two Metaspeed versions are different, but they're both very good. The other brand that's also prevalent, mostly with the front of the pack, is the Asics. I'm sorry, the Adidas Adizero shoes, and those have a different feel too. I think those are certainly conducive for fast running mostly. Whereas the other ones do have some pronounced energy return, even through the the mid pack of say like a 3-hour marathon, 3:15 marathon.
Yeah.
The Hoka Carbon X shoe was launched at a time. They came actually after their first. They had a shoe, an initial shoe that was like a lower to the ground shoe that came out the year before and didn't get a lot of play. It was more like a traditional racing flat that had a carbon fiber plate, but it didn't have that huge stack and that huge propulsion from it. So
what was the name of it? Do you remember?
I'll think of it in a second, but
I don't remember this story.
So that came out kind of like, that was a Jean-Luc Diard kind of creation that came out with again, like more of like a traditional racing flat. The Carbon X was their chance to kind of enter the world that Nike had already kind of created. And like, they launched it with that big time trial in Sacramento where Jim Walmsley, once again, broke the 50-mile world best wearing a pair of those. But immediately, Hoka was saying, well, this is a more democratic approach to carbon fiber shoes. And to some extent it was, because it wasn't that bouncy, super fast feeling. It was more of and this is my impression, it was more of a situation where you really had to get in rhythm with that shoe. It felt very, very curvy and very rolly, but it didn't necessarily allow you to, stride out and spring out and push off. It was more like you came down and you rolled because the shoe wanted you to roll, and then you rolled forward. And so I think two things. One, I think maybe it didn't have a top end speed for that. I don't think it's that fast of a shoe for say sub 2:30 marathons or that kind of thing, or, you know, sub 34-minute 10Ks. I think that I think that it had some consistency. It had definitely some energy propulsion, but not to the point of being super fast, right? But also, I think the other challenge is that a lot of runners probably shied away from that because when trying it on or trying it out, I just don't think it fits with a lot of people's stride pattern. You know, I think it takes a lot of effort to run with that rhythm of the shoe, whereas most other super shoes, you can run however you're going to run to some extent, and you're going to get that propulsion out of it because it's going to match the foam is going to allow to assimilate to your stride and then kind of go from there. Whereas the Hoka Carbon X and the 2 and the 3 all seem to be very roll. You get into it, you land, and it rolls your foot as opposed to you guiding the shoe. And so I don't think the combination of any of that, the shape, the foam, the plate, was very fast, right? Was exceptionally fast. At the Olympic trials in 2020 in Atlanta for the U.S. Olympic trials, they did debut a shoe called the Rocket X, which was kind of low profile, or kind of a modest profile, but it seemed to be effective. It seemed to be lighter. It seemed to be have more flow than that original Carbon X. And so now they've been kind of silent. They've been kind of late to the game, in my estimation, with having a really good super foam and a good plate design. And so I think what you're seeing now, starting with the Boston Marathon this past spring, and then also Ironman, the full Ironman in Hawaii, the 70.3 in St. George, and then most recently New York, is that some of their athletes, most of their pro athletes, had the Rocket X2, which I think will be finally, that shoe that competes to some extent, I think, with those other brands we've talked about. I mean, it's a higher stack height. It seems to be super light. I've only picked it up and kind of held it. I haven't actually worn it or run in it, but I know the athletes who have run in it swear by it.
But those athletes are not on the podium.
Say again?
Those athletes are not on the podium.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few, but not many. I mean, there's been some athletes who have placed top 10s and stuff like that, and so certainly it hasn't proven out like the Nike shoes or the Asics shoes. Yeah. I mean, I recently did I guess last week I went through every single photo I could find of the top 25 runners for men and women in New York City, and I think only 3 were wearing the Hoka shoe. And I think the leaders were for sure Asics and Nike, and third was Adidas for sure.
Yeah. So I think you said something very interesting. You said that, if I understand correctly, that the Carbon X shoe is not as easy to run in as the Nike or the Asics. It's pretty much what you've said, and it's not as fast. And I mean, I also believe, and we said that in the former conversations, that a lot of people buy those shoes even though they don't have the speed to properly benefit, or even the gait to properly use those shoes, but they still what they want. Like, if I have money and I want to look like the runners, or I'm thinking that's going to make me faster, I'm going to go with the fastest shoe on the market. So I'm going to go with Nike.
Yep.
For sure. I'm not going to go with a shoe from Hoka that sure has a carbon plate, but has not been proven to be the fastest.
I agree. I think that certainly that can be deduced, from seeing the shoes in the top 25 in New York, but it can also, I think any runner can kind of, go out for a test drive of these shoes and kind of realize what works best for them, and I think that I just don't think that the Carbon X was on par with all the other elite racing shoes. Maybe the Rocket X2 will be, but until the results show that out, it's an unknown,
Yeah, and I also think they missed an opportunity with Gustav Iden, one of the Norwegian who won Kona, because a few weeks before Kona, the guy had no shoe sponsor.
I know.
Right? And then who signed it up? On Running, who had become a lifestyle brand. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my opinion, On Running had become more of a lifestyle brand, like people wear it in the streets. And now On is back where it belongs, how it started in triathlon, with this shoe that Gustav Iden was wearing. And I kind of feel bad for Hoka, because Hoka should have been there with whether the Carbon X or a shoe. And I don't know the background of this. Like, maybe Gustav Iden has tried a Hoka shoe and be like, no, you know what? I don't really like it. It's not fast enough.
No, I totally agree. And like, I think to your point, if we talk about On for a second, I think On has really made a surge in the last year. And it was really, you know, they did become a lifestyle brand. And to that point, like I've seen those shoes like being worn in airports or around Manhattan, you know, like just like the Nike Freeze were for a while, you know, and it's like, so certainly On has a clean look that people like, but I think they've really made a surge back into kind of the professional ranks or the elite performance ranks, not only with their road running shoes, but their track spikes have really done a lot as well. And so the other point is that Chelsea Sodaro, who won the women's Ironman,
in Nike,
actually I think Asics, but she had been a Hoka athlete and had done reasonably well in her kind of comeback. She had a baby about 18 months ago and had a pretty good 70.3, but she actually, you know, was sponsored to some extent by Hoka, and she backed away, and I think broke her deal because they didn't have a super shoe that she liked. And if you go back and look at the film of that, she actually raced in her old race kit, which had many different logos, including Hoka on it, even though she wasn't wearing Hoka. So
in Hawaii?
Yeah, correct.
Even though she was wearing Asics.
Correct. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. And like, I think that contract broke probably in, I think she did 70.3 Hamburg and raced pretty well. But broke the contract either right before that or right after that because she wanted to race Hawaii without it. And now, hopefully, based on her success, she winds up with a shoe deal of some sort, and hopefully from Asics. I'm not sure if that's happened yet, but like certainly it's a unique thing with Ironman triathletes because as much as they are professionals and they have this elite status in the world of sport, man, they sure don't have a lot of shoe deals tied to those.
Yeah, they have bike deals. Okay, another brand I want to talk to you about is the North Face. The North Face started the UTMB in 2003. You know, Toffer Gillard, I'm sure you know him.
Yep.
Was the EMEA boss for the North Face, and that's him with another person who and the Poletti who started the UTMB. So the race, he was like, yes, let's do it. And at the time, the North Face, I was wearing the North Face gear. I mean, they even had a line of shoes that weren't that great at the time. I'm talking about the 2000, you know. Yep. And then the North Face again became a brand that you were wearing in Manhattan or Paris, you know. And recently, it's been like a year, in my opinion, maybe less. I mean, I was surprised at the Western States and then at the UTMB, and then Katy Sheed is a North Face athlete. They're back very strongly. They're making strong statements by having athletes who win races with gear, with the North Face equipment.
Yeah. It's, you know, the North Face is one of those brands that really kind of I struggle to understand because they've been in the running footwear game for, gosh, 20 years. You know, and one of the, actually when I started Trail Runner magazine here in the US, one of the first shoes I reviewed or ran in was the North Face Spire Road shoe, which was fairly low to the ground, but it was actually fairly well built and everything else. But in that time, they've had they've put a lot of effort, a lot of money, and a lot of good, talented people into their shoe program, and have not, up until recently, really had much success with shoes that people wanted to buy and wear in the trails, right? And it's one thing if an athlete wears a modified version, and you never know what that version is compared to what is for sale. And so, but I think now, you know, they were bold, and they came out with the first carbon fiber shoe for the trails, the Flight Vective, 2 years ago.
Yeah, and, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm stopping you here. The North Face was the first brand to release a trail running shoe with a carbon plate in it.
Yep, correct. And like
that's a strong statement.
That being said, and they had a really good. They that was right after they had a really strong footwear team come together, which is still a really strong team. And you know, sometimes it takes time to organize things. But the Flight Vective was just too stiff, just too awkward. It didn't have the feel that you wanted to have it for trails or for running fast. And so that was a bit of a very mediocre effort, and that reflected in sales and with athletes that, you know, kind of reflected that. And to their credit, though, they went back to the drawing board a little bit and then made some tweaks. And I think really this year at UTMB, we saw a lot of good results in their shoes. And like Zach Miller, Caitlin Gerben, the one Katie that won the race. And so now, I mean, I think that's testament to, having seen the shoes a little bit, I've not worn them yet because they're not available yet. But I really think that they turned a corner, and I hope for their sake that they're as good as they seem, because I do know that like I said, 2 years ago, that first shoe didn't really launch as well as it could have. But I think they're better now. I think that everything that athletes have said speaks to that. And, for years, there was plenty of athletes that ran for North Face that didn't run in North Face shoes because they just couldn't, and
Well, I mean, for a while, they even didn't have proper trail running shoes. I mean, like you're rightly saying, 20 years ago, they had a few models. And then I think again, I don't really know, but I think it completely disappeared. Like no one was wearing the North Face for running, like in terms of elite, or even I would not have purchased a trail running shoe from North Face. And now I'm back into being interested.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I mean, how brands kind of ebb and flow. I mean, the North Face could never get off the ground, but at the same time, if you look at road running, we could say that Under Armour has never achieved the success they could have, or K-Swiss didn't achieve it, and there's so many. Pearl Zumi is gone, and despite those companies each having deep backgrounds in sports and fitness, each of those brands never made it in running. So running is a little bit fickle. Trail running might be more fickle. And to be authentic and to be good is certainly no small mix. I mean, we know that for years there was a lot of boot companies, Scarpa, La Sportiva, brands like that made more durable or more mountain oriented shoes, but weren't as good as running shoes. And then a lot of running brands made runnable, faster shoes, but not as durable. And so it's been a whirlwind. But I think in the last 5 or 7 years, we know that obviously there's been good trail running shoes from Salomon, from Hoka, from a lot of brands. North Face certainly has been one of the most intriguing in that they haven't figured it out. But that being said, I really think this next crop of shoes for 2023 is going to be top tier.
Yeah. That makes me think of what I was listening to Nike. Nike a few years back had a trail running team that came in force to a show of force at the UTMB. David Laney was one of them. Yep. Zach Miller was one of them. If I'm not mistaken.
Tim Tollefson was on that team. There was a bunch. There was 8 to 10, at least 8 to 10.
Very promising athletes.
Yep.
And then what happened to this? Where is that at?
Yeah, Nike's a fickle company as well. I mean, Nike obviously is all about running. They're all about basketball, and then they're all about other sports at different times. If you look at their participation in snowboard, sometimes they're in, sometimes they're out. Like ice hockey. They bought Bauer, a company that makes ice hockey skates, and then just to make ice hockey, and then they sold it, and they're not really into it now. So Nike can be fickle as much as they're a giant company, can do anything they want. I think the biggest thing with Nike in trail running is there was some interest within the team, within the company. We should be in trail running. And for years they had they had Nike ACG, they had
Nike ACG.
They had a Nike Pegasus trail all the time, but there was never really a dedicated technical trail running shoe. And so in 2013 or 2014, they started this team, and they rounded up some pretty good runners who not only were pretty good to start with, but they got even better. Mm-hmm. And then they had those couple of years at UTMB when Laney and Tollefson and Zach all ran really, really strongly. And then very quickly they pared down the team. In 2015 they were there with a big show and tell of athletes, and they had a big party and everything else. And but then by 2016, 2017, they'd pared that back, and they still have some athletes, but not nearly as big as it is. And so if you know a little bit about Nike trail running, it falls under a different budget. So it doesn't come under running. It comes under a subcategory of youth running and cross country. Oh. And it's just knowing that kind of gives you a bigger idea of, okay, it's not as a top tier importance like marathoning is, or training is, or basketball. And so it comes under a different budget as far as I've ever been told by Nike people. And they've done a pretty good job generally to design and improve the Terra Kiger and the Wild Horse. And that being said, Nike is still a little bit off the back on proper materials, and they're always design heavy, and so their shoes look great, and they have these great beautiful design motifs, but they're even still they're some of their shoes, their current Zagama is a good shoe, and they say it has sticky rubber outsole, but it does not. It's very slippery on rock, and so Nike can do things well, but Nike is also almost that 500-pound gorilla that doesn't move quick enough or isn't as core enough to the sport. Now, if you look at like track and field, obviously they're very connected to that sport.
Yeah, which is very interesting actually, because what did that say about the industry of the trail running or the trail running phenomenon that we all talk about here when we are in the industry? You know, is Nike wrong? Because Nike can do anything they want. You know, you're talking about design. If Nike wants to come up with put the budget and get the right designers to come up with the best shoe in the planet for trail running, they can do it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but Nike's
they're not interested in it is like, why is that? Is it because this segment of trail running that we think is big is not that big, or are they?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think that Nike sees the world through different vision than we do, or that most companies do. And like, so for a company like even like a Hoka, which is now getting much bigger, but some of the other brands I mentioned, like Scarpa or La Sportiva or Brooks, for example, they see trail running as a great growth opportunity, and it's getting bigger, and it is getting bigger, believe me. But I think Nike sees, like, you know, Nike is such a huge company. They see like general running is like this huge thing, and trail running is this tiny piece of the pie.
Yeah, but at the same time, I would argue that a brand like Adidas, which, okay, maybe Adidas is a bit smaller than Nike, but Adidas is the second biggest, you know, sports brand on the planet. Adidas has a great trail running slash outdoor brand, which is Terex, right? Yep. And you see it. I saw it at Western State. You see the teams. You see them at UTMB. You see them in the Hong Kong 100. You see them. You see Adidas Terex a lot.
Yeah, I've seen their team. I was most recently in La Palma, and they were there at the Transvolcania race from UTMB, and you know their team is really dedicated. Kind of the way that Salomon used to be. Salomon has kind of taken a step back too, unfortunately. But like Adidas Terex has definitely got a dedicated team that they make sure that their athletes are in the forefront of all the major races, and they it's both an international team and a U.S. team, which is interesting because not all teams do that. But to have both an international team and a U.S. team says a lot about their commitment to trail running and trail racing, and therefore being closer to the sport. You know.
Yeah, which is so it's interesting. Nike's not really into it, and Adidas is. I think it's
totally. Yeah, and then the other one I mentioned was Salomon. I mean, Salomon is still actively involved, mostly with the Golden Trail World Series, and that was a great event this year. Both all the events nationally, but also they just had the championship on Madeira 2 weeks ago, and that was a really good success. And that's certainly it's a Salomon production and everything else, and you know they put money behind a lot of races, including Pikes Peak in the U.S. and the Broken Arrow and such. And I think you know Salomon's still great in trail. They've had some challenges with distribution and stuff. I think that maybe supply chain hurt them more than most brands. I know that
like recently, I've heard because of COVID.
I've heard from a lot of retailers they just either can't get the shoes or it's some kind of disconnect. So I think that like you know it might have been a change in leadership too. I mean, like I think Salomon is still a respected brand, but it's definitely you know, like there's other brands like that are surging for that number one spot in trail.
Yeah, you know what made me sad about Salomon, and I'm saying this openly. I mean, I'm French. I love Salomon. I would love Salomon to keep being so strong as they were before. What made me sad about Salomon is Kilian Jornet, who was the Salomon athlete by excellence. You know, he was Salomon discovered Kilian Jornet. You know, Salomon made Kilian Jornet as much as Kilian Jornet made Salomon trail running, right? Yep. And then Kilian leaves Salomon and starts his own brand with Camper. I don't know if you've tried the shoe, the normal. I mean,
I'm actually waiting for samples. I haven't had them yet, but
they're awesome. They're awesome.
I've seen him at the UTMB Expo, and I saw him on Kilian's feet at Hard Rock.
And so, and the approach that Kilian and Camper are taking with this shoe, you know, the environmental friendly approach that they're taking is the right one for sure. Yep. And it just makes me sad for Salomon because they had an opportunity to turn this trail running god into like, I mean, to benefit from it. And right when, I mean, what have done Kilian this year is amazing. Hard Rock win, UTMB win, launch his new shoe brand. Yep. Those are all wins.
I agree. I totally agree. I agree. And like, you know, in my understanding, like Salomon always underpaid Kilian. I mean, he was never making what he should have been or could have been, considering that he was the face of the sport.
He was.
And on one level, you know, congrats to Kilian. I mean, Kilian's a great guy, and like, very earnest about what he does, and like I'm happy for him that he's launching his own brand. And launching your own brand is no easy task, and so there's no guarantee it's going to work. But I hope it does.
Yeah.
But I give big applause to Kilian for doing that. At the same time, Salomon, again, like Salomon, it could be a change in kind of management of or structure of the brand. It's hard to say. I mean, like I think that a lot of brands make decisions sometimes that I don't understand. When Nike dropped Meb Keflezighi, and then he wound up being a success for 10 more years. But at the same time, I think that Salomon certainly could have made more with Kilian, with this new shoe line could have been through Kilian, and like I just think
Kilian Jordan, he's the Michael Jordan of trail running.
Absolutely.
Like Michael Jordan was, after his career, Nike kept him.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It doesn't make sense, because even now it's like, when we think about Kilian in 10 years, we'll still think about Salomon, even though he's got normal, and I think that it's a unique thing, because it's both marketing and branding, but it's also just personality that's connected to it. And like,
absolutely,
that whole Summits of My Life series, the video series, was extraordinary, and way ahead of its time. And yet, Salomon decided to let him go. And even if Kilian had his own entrepreneurial spirit, that it's kind of a shame it didn't work out.
Yeah, they could have had a Kilian sub brand into the Salomon trail running shoe category or something. Anyway, the last thing is, I want to have your opinion on this, because to me, hats off to a Swedish brand named Craft. Not so far ago was just an apparel brand. They came up with great shoes, I believe. They also came up with a great campaign, and the way they orchestrated the support for Tommy Riv. It was hard to criticize this. I was very interested in the subject, and I was like, okay, so they're betting money and advertising on this guy who is dying, who's probably going to die, and he's an icon of the sport, and he's so popular, and he looks amazing. And so are they just trying to make money out of it? But I just couldn't find a way to criticize them. The way they orchestrated it, I think, was awesome. I mean, we met at Western State at the craft party, you and I. I mean, hats off to them, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is an amazing thing, and backing up to their apparel. I mean, I wore Craft apparel for years. They were, I think, initially in Nordic skiing and everything else, but they made really good quality apparel for years. And then when I heard they were bringing shoes into the marketplace, that's not an easy thing to do. But I think their shoes have really been good. I think that their Ultra Carbon and then the Ultra Carbon Trail are both interesting and unique shoes. I think that I was talking to David Laney, and like, the idea of having this kind of gravel bike concept for a trail running shoe is really cool. It's like it does a lot of things really well. It's versatile. It can be fast. It can be durable. All these things. Anyway, so I think the whole Tommy Riv thing is totally unique. I mean, most athletes, when they're sick or injured, or their career is not going to be what it was, and let's face it, he's not going to run a 2:18 marathon ever again, and he'll be the first to tell you that. But I think his influence and his aura and his spirit, he's so genuine. He's such a good person. And someone that you can just tell me yesterday about what a good guy he was. But like, he is like the super generous, super kind person that kind of extends or transcends past just running performance.
I agree.
And I think that's made him such a big part of what that brand is. And will continue to do that going forward. I think that it's a unique thing, because if you remember, like, when athletes get hurt or even ill, like Lance Armstrong was dropped, and after his cancer in 1996, and many other athletes we could go through that had a career defining or career changing injury, were quickly off the team, and like that's how it goes. But this is a unique relationship, and I give credit to Kraft, both the U.S. and their Swedish teams that really realized the value in him.
Yeah, I think they pinpoint something very important for runners, is that running is not only about winning and timing and things like that. It's about also being free to run, and it's a simple thing, and back to the basics. And actually, I saw recently their post on Instagram, left leg, right leg, left leg, right leg. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah.
And I think this is awesome. This is awesome, because we've also, like, a lot of people love it, but also we've come to, I mean, today we live with Strava, with Garmin, we have so many statistics, so many interesting stuff, but the basics of running, and that guy incarnates it, and this reminds me of surfing, free surfing, people that are paid just to be themselves, like Laird Hamilton, for example.
Yep.
And those people are great images of the sport.
I agree. And running and trail running bring that to, like few other sports. I mean, like certainly surfing, you could say that golf, you and I can golf, but we're not as good as the other people, but like, running is different in that, like, if it's soccer or football or basketball, like you, as an adult, you can continue to play those sports, but you're not playing those sports, right? You might go to the park and kick a ball.
Most sports are about winning.
Right. But like, but
the human case with running, which is not the case with surfing or skateboarding.
Right.
Or
and the satisfaction you get out of that, might vary from some sort of accomplishment or some sort of just, result of your hard work, or just some sort of enjoyment of physically moving and being healthy. I think it's so personifies what running is about.
Which is the Tommy Riv story.
Yep, totally agree. That's why I run. I ran track and field when I was much younger and was fast, and I used to love to wear racing spikes. But that's years ago. I love it now because of what it brings me now, just joy and freedom.
Yeah, of course. All right, man. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed doing this, and that's been very enlightening. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I love these conversations, and like you're the perfect person to talk to, because it's like it's engaging, real conversation, and that's always good.
Well, you're the perfect person to talk to.
Well, let's do it again.
Have a good day, my friend. Yes, absolutely. Let's do it again. Take care. Thank you. Bye.